Wednesday night, and that, of course, means court is in session on RFL. We're packing our panel full of top-flight attorneys and thankfully waiving their fees here. We're going to break down some issues tonight. Let's start off going around the table. William Aaronwald, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, and he's at Aaronwald and Pickett in White Plains. Most recently, you may remember him because he represented Kerry Kennedy for her acquittal on impaired driving charges. That went well for him. Jimmy Kasouris, criminal defense attorney in Manhattan, lectures at New York Law School, and is a visiting professor at the University of Birmingham, not in Alabama, as I always say, but in England. And Doug Von Oist, founding partner of Carson Von Oist, focusing on corporate misconduct, and was selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial attorneys in the nation. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. All right, let's start off in Mississippi tonight, where at least two major legal cases are getting national attention. The first one involves a case, 57-year-old woman, Michelle Byram. She is convicted in her husband's murder here. Tonight, she's hours away from being put to death by lethal injection. It'll be the first time a woman has been put to death in Mississippi in more than 70 years. However, in written letters and in testimony, and a confession also to the psychiatrist, her son confessed to committing the actual crime, but those letters were never presented to a jury. Psychologist, as I said, also says that Byron's son told him that he fantasized about killing his dad. Psychologist not allowed to testify. Byram also says that she and her son were physically and emotionally abused by her late husband, and once again, that information not conveyed to the jury. And you know what, guys? When I actually read up on this case, it seemed as if this was the most inadequate defense I could ever hear of. The attorneys never presented before trial as evidence those confessions. They figured they'd spring it mid-trial. It was the first capital case I guess they ever took. It wasn't admitted. And then you have questions about the prosecutor, who knew about these confessions that were made, repeated ones, and they never made it into trial. And then when at the end of it, they get to the sentencing phase, again, the defense attorneys, the rocket scientists, they decide to shoot pool here and say, hey, the judge will throw a mistrial here. Let's not even do anything. And it didn't work out that way. Just from a layperson, when you read this, you say, wait a minute. She didn't kill the guy. No one's even alleging she did. But they don't even know or have any evidence if they got the right guy who pulled the trigger. And what her role actually was with any tangible evidence. It just seems amazing to me from the outside. There's enough evidence to convict, let alone put somebody to death.
Well, you know, judges sometimes, appellate judges sometimes like to say that you're guaranteed a fair trial but not a perfect trial. You know, but where there's a claim of ineffective assistance of counsel, the litmus test generally is that where a defense attorney provides what could be called ineffective assistance, it doesn't necessarily result in a reversal of the conviction unless the attorney's mistakes or errors in the defense of his client rise to a level where had he done what they're saying he should have done, the result would have been different, or there would have likely been a different outcome. Now, from what you're saying, all of these little errors, you know, the fact that he didn't introduce the son's confessions in representing the defendant, you know, that is not harmless error. I mean, that basically is certainly something which, had the jury heard it, you know, they may very well have come to a different result. There was no question here that she was not the one who pulled the trigger. She's not the one who physically, she was in a hospital at the time.
And apparently under such medication, there's even a debate if she was of sound mind when she was questioning the answers that she gave. I mean, you keep adding all this stuff up.
But again, you have to understand that what the theory was, based upon her confession, that she had hired someone to do it. Now, as it turned out, she's claiming that that confession, if you will, was the result of a detective saying to her, you know, if you don't confess, your son is going to go down for this, and we'll put him to death. The residue
powder was on the guy that wasn't even considered to be the shooter. It was on her son's fingers. It wasn't on the guy that went away for doing the crime. My point, I guess, Jimmy, is we're talking about death. Okay, and when you're talking about the death penalty, don't we have to be completely sure? It seems like they're saying good enough.
The fact that we continue to try to execute people under circumstances such as this, as case after case after case emerges, and the fact that appeals are met with such resistance, is an abomination. We should be ashamed.
I think we need to understand that the criminal justice system, if nothing else, is not infallible.
Right.
We make mistakes. Years ago, Governor Rockefeller consistently refused to sign the death penalty bill in New York. And when pressed as to what his objection was to the death penalty, he said, as soon as someone figures out a way to bring somebody back that we've executed, where the evidence shows we executed the wrong person, I will sign the bill. Until then, I'm opposed to it. And because the system is not infallible, there should not be a death penalty.
And we have seen here, mistakes have been made with the death penalty. It used to be anecdotal, but there's enough case evidence to say innocent people have been put to death, and looks at all the people that have been exonerated after years for being wrongfully convicted. All right, I want to get to another case in the Magnolia State, and it's a 16-year-old girl who's facing life in prison for something called fetal homicide. Doctors say, or a doctor say, that she gave birth to a stillborn baby. Now, everybody agrees on that part, but here's where the disagreement is. The state medical examiner conducted an autopsy, and he found traces of cocaine byproduct in the child's blood. The teen mom then charged with murder. However, later tests showed that the child, in fact, died from the umbilical cord being tied around its neck. Now, 38 states in the country have fetal homicide laws. However, tonight, we want to know, while fetal homicide is even coming into play in this case, and Doug, you know, I saw somebody doing the analogy that Jackie O lost a child and she was smoking, and could that be considered? But the idea that this reaches the threshold here, I mean, she could go wait, this for life sentence is what she's possibly facing. 16-year-old kid, let's assume that she was an idiot and taking drugs that she didn't. Does that reach to the level here, or should it reach to the level here of, in effect, murder?
Well, I'm thinking about civil cases now, where you'll hear stories, anecdotal stories about people having brain tumors, and they say, well, it's the cell phones, and then somebody tries to bring a case, and you try to bring in experts that say, and they'll put those experts to task, and they'll say, well, what are you relying upon? Give me the studies, and they'll have a Daubert hearings about it, and it never goes anywhere. Well, even though people may say, hey, I think there is something here. And here's a criminal case where they can just kind of say it, and and it is what it is. I mean, it's very unfair. I mean, it's just kind of an allegation that's unsubstantiated as far as I'm concerned.
Well, you have to also understand, that now everybody agrees that, women who are pregnant should not drink alcohol. So are we now going to subject every woman who drinks, even though she's pregnant, to reckless endangerment charges because she's pregnant? I mean, it's absurd. Makes no sense. And in this case, the fact that you have conflicting medical testimony, there's no evidence that the byproduct of cocaine found in the baby's system was the cause of the baby's death. The medical examiner just wrote it off as a homicide. But there was also no dispute, apparently, that there was an umbilical cord tied around the fetus.
But let me make this tougher. Let's say there was unanimity that she ingested drugs that caused the fetal homicide, okay? Her body recklessly taking actions. In that scenario, is it murder, and should it raise to the level of, and she's a minor in this case, a 16-year-old going away for life in prison by doing something stupid when she was carrying child?
Doing something stupid is not doing something criminal. And somebody said the word reckless. There are certain elements, there are certain mindset that is required in order to hold somebody criminally liable under a reckless theory. It's got to be a risk that you know about, a substantial risk that's going to cause death. So even if you could agree that taking the cocaine could have done this, does she know of that risk before she does that? Does she disregard it on purpose? Absolutely not. Not on these facts. So even in your hypothetical, no, I don't think so.
And this, as we said, isn't just in Mississippi and this is in 38 states. Obviously, this has to do with the whole culture wars and the debate over abortion and choice and everything else. This plays all into this as a backdrop of it. But this looks like it's going to move forward. It's going to be fascinating to follow this thing here, where you're now.
It's on for dismissal next week, right?
It is,
hopefully.
But people have said that if it was going to be dismissed, we probably would have heard it by now. That there's a real chance to go to trial. So, amazing.
Do you see this? An Indiana woman attempted suicide while pregnant and was prosecuted.
Yeah.
For murder, and then later charges were dismissed. Another woman was charged after falling down the stairs and suffering a miscarriage. What is going on?
Yeah, I'm telling you, people think that we fought this fight and Roe v. Wade settled it. It hasn't. This is all part of the same debate, and it's now just not playing in the state houses. It's playing in the courtrooms as well. Okay. We come back here. These three guys probably be the best ones to explain a question I have, where guy beaten savagely by the cops, all caught on videotape, so there's no debate about it. But his out-of-court settlement was for a whole lot less than I thought it would have been, considering how graphic the video it is. Look at it play out right in front of you. So the question is, how does a number get decided? And when lawyers make a deal, how do they factor in what is justice here when you're talking about a wrong being committed? Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back.